Okay, so right now I'm going to show you 12 different colored pencil techniques that you can use for the coming color unit. You should have already drawn out your squares like this, but if you haven't, please pause the video and draw the squares and label them the way I have here. Now, for this, you're going to need 4 colored pencils, and they need to be sharp. You need to make sure they're nice and sharp before you start. You need 2 colors. I don't care what 2 colors you choose, just get 2 colors, preferably a darker one and a lighter one. And then you need black and white. And again, make sure your pencils are nice and sharp. Okay, so choose one color to start with. It can be the dark or the light. I'm going with the dark. And we are going to start with this square up here, the light square. And this is just the kind of pressure that you are going to use to color in this square. So you are going to use light pressure. And to get a nice light pressure without having to worry about if you press too hard, hold your pencil towards the back instead of up close to the point. So in this square, I'm just gonna do light pressure. I'm not even worrying about coloring in the whole square all the way. And I'm just gonna go all the way across with a nice light pressure, the same pressure all the way across. Now for the second one, we're gonna do medium pressure. So press a little bit harder than the light, but not super hard. So I'm gonna hold my pencil a little bit closer to the point and press just a little bit harder. So I get a nice medium value. And now we're gonna do the heavy pressure. So now I can hold it a lot closer to the point. I'm just gonna make sure that this is darker than the medium pressure. So now I have a light, medium, and heavy pressure. Now we're gonna talk about burnishing. So burnishing is a technique that creates nice, smooth shading where very little white from the paper shows through your pencil shading. So I'm gonna do a more medium pressure, and then I'm just gonna keep doing that over and over again until I have a nice, smooth shading with very little white from the paper showing through. One thing that you can also do, which we'll talk about in a minute, is little circular motions to get an even smoother shading. So when you are done with burnishing, it should feel kind of waxy and it should look nice and smooth. Now let's talk about straight shading. So that's kind of what I've been doing the whole time, is just up and down, straight shading. And that is just shading the whole thing going in the same direction. So even down here towards the bottom, I'm not gonna turn my paper or my pencil and start going this way. I'm going to shade the same way the whole time. And you can get nice smooth shading with this, especially if you're using more of the side of the lead instead of the point. So we've got straight shading. Now let's talk about circle shading. So for circle shading, you're gonna do little circular movements like this. And I'm going to do that for this whole square. So I'm just doing little circles to shade this in. I really like using circular shading because I find it's easier to get nice smooth shading when I do this. The next type of shading we're gonna do is cross shading. And we're just gonna start with straight shading like we did over here. But the cross means that I'm gonna actually go the other way as well. So this is where you can turn your paper or your pencil and start shading the other way. This helps create an even smoother shading than the straight shading. Now, for layer, you're gonna need your other colored pencil as well, but we're gonna still start with the same one. And I'm just going to shade the top half with my darker color. And now I'm going to bring in my lighter color and I'm going to shade up and down on the left half. So I get 2 layers of color in this top left corner. And you can see that it's creating more of a blue-green, and then we have blue and green. So layering is a technique you can use when you don't have the exact color you need, but you remember color theory and you can combine some colors to make the color that you want. So now gradate is a technique where you go from light to dark or dark to light. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna start with heavy pressure on the left, and then as I move across, I'm gonna slowly lighten the pressure or press less hard as I move across. If it's easier for you to start light and go dark, that is fine as well. You can do that. But you can see I go from dark to light. And again, that is just how hard I'm pressing. So I'm pressing really hard over here, and then as I move across, I slowly lighten how hard I'm pressing until I get a nice light value. Now we're gonna do a gradate with 2 colors. So I'm gonna do the same thing with my blue. Start with a heavy pressure, and as I move across, I'll lighten it. But now I'm going to bring in my second color, and I'm going to go from the right to the left, but I'm gonna use the same pressure technique that I used for the blue. So I'm starting harder over here, and then I'm slowly letting up on the pressure, but I'm not going all the way across because I want this side to stay blue. So again, I started with a harder pressure, a heavier pressure, and as I moved across, I slowly lightened how hard I was pushing. Now, we're gonna do 2 more gradates, but we're gonna do one with white and one with black. So I'm gonna do the blue for this one. So again, I'm just doing the same thing that I did over here for this square, starting heavy and moving to lighter. But this time, I'm going to take my white, I'm gonna do the same thing that I did here, but I'm gonna use white. So in our case, it doesn't change the value too much, but it does make it look a lot smoother. And this is a technique that you can use with burnishing as well. So if I wanted to put a layer of blue down, but I wanted to burnish it with white because I didn't want it to be this dark, you could do that. And now I'm going to use my lighter color for the one with black. I'm gonna do the same thing. Make a gradate, start with heavy pressure and move to lighter pressure. And then I am going to add black on top. So I don't need to press as hard with black because it's such a dark value, but I'm still pressing a little bit harder over here and then lightening the pressure as I move across. So I could have done this with black first. So I could have started with black and then done green on top of it. So that is something you can play around with. It's the same thing as layering, but we're using different pressures. And there's your 12 colored pencil techniques that you guys can start using.